Hey everybody, it's Art Haglund, and this one already looks like it's less blurry. I think it just happened to have been the version of UCam that I was using. But in any event, I did clean the camera lens cover off here at the built-in on my laptop. Been looking for a lot of things that to continue in my writings, and just been trying to find pretty much all of the verse theology proof texts that the Calvinists use, and I decided to go also the other way, that the Calvinists don't always just proof text. They also will take and attack the what they would call the Arminian position of other passages. And one such passage, and I will link to James White's video in the description and tell you what time marks to look for to hear his error in teaching. Matthew 23:37. part of what he says is right in this, and I'm not going to be dishonest and say every single thing that he says is wrong, because it's not, and that's just, quite frankly, not how the devil works. The devil doesn't come and substitute your food for a lump of poison. He substitutes your food for food that's been poisoned. Remember what Jesus said: a little leaven leavens a whole lump. And anybody that bakes knows that the amount of flour, water, eggs, and everything else that you were to put into bread is not equaled by the yeast you put in there. It's really a very modest amount of yeast that's put in compared to the rest, but it does affect the whole thing. And Jesus said basically you have to throw that lump away and get a new lump, and we need to do that with Calvinism. I'm going to read the entire chapter of Matthew 23 because well, James White did that in his, and of course, like he likes to accuse other people, he will say I'm trying to gain fame, which I'm not, and I'm going to be riding his bootstraps or his coattails or whatever. And it just isn't the case. He has put himself out there as an expert. He has put himself out there as a Calvinist, and whether he uses the terms or not, he proclaims that Calvinism is the gospel. So here we go with Matthew 23. Then spake Jesus unto the multitude and to his disciples, saying, the scribes and the Pharisees sit in Moses' seat. All therefore, whatsoever they bid you observe, that observe and do. But do not ye after their works, for they say and do not. For they bind heavy burdens and grievous to be borne, and they lay them on men's shoulders, but they themselves will not move them with one of their fingers. But all the works they do for to be seen of men, they make broad their phylacteries, and enlarge the borders of their garments, and love the uppermost rooms at feasts, and the chief seats in the synagogue, and greetings in the markets, and to be called of men, Rabbi, Rabbi. But be not ye called Rabbi, for one is your master, even Christ, and all ye are brethren. And call no man your father upon the earth, for one is your Father, which is in heaven. Neither be called masters, for one is your master, even Christ. But he who is greatest among you shall be your servant. and whosoever shall exalt himself shall be abased. He that shall humble himself shall be exalted. But woe unto you, scribes, Pharisees, hypocrites! For you shut up the kingdom of heaven against men. For ye neither go in yourselves, neither suffer them that are entering to go in. Woe unto you, scribes and Pharisees, hypocrites! For you devour widows' houses, and for a pretense make long prayer. Therefore you shall receive the greater damnation. Woe unto you, scribes and Pharisees, hypocrites! For you compass sea and land to make one proselyte, and when he is made, you make him twofold more the child of hell than yourselves. Woe unto ye, blind guides, which say, Whosoever shall swear by the temple, it's nothing. But whosoever shall swear by the gold of the temple, he is a debtor. You fools and blind, for whether is greater, the gold or the temple that sanctifies the gold? And whosoever shall swear by the altar, it is nothing. But whosoever sweareth by the gift that is upon it, he is guilty. Fools and blind, for whether is greater, the gift or the altar that sanctifieth the gift? Whoso therefore shall swear by the altar sweareth by it, and by all things thereon. Whosoever shall swear by the temple sweareth by it, and by him that dwelleth within. And he that shall swear by heaven sweareth by the throne of God, and by him that sitteth thereon. Woe unto you, scribes and Pharisees, hypocrites! For ye pay the tithe of mint and anise, and come in, and have omitted the weightier matters of the law, judgment, mercy, faith. These ought ye have done, and not leave the others undone. Blind guides, which strain at a gnat and swallow a camel. Woe unto you, scribes and Pharisees, hypocrites! For ye make clean the outside of the cup and of the platter, but within they are full of extortion and excess. Blind Pharisees, cleanse first that which is within the cup and platter, that the outside of them may be clean also. Woe unto you, scribes, Pharisees, hypocrites! For ye are like unto white sepulchres, which indeed appear beautiful outward, but are within full of dead men's bones, and all uncleanness. Even so, ye also outwardly appear righteous unto men, but within you are full of hypocrisy and iniquity. Woe unto you, scribes and Pharisees, hypocrites! Because ye build the tombs of the prophets, and garnish the sepulchres of the righteous, and say, If we had been in the days of our fathers, we would have not been partakers of them in the blood of the prophets. I'm going to stop there for a minute, because the next verse is something James White read. Didn't really go back to it, and it's important. And in fact, it's key to his error. Verse 31. Wherefore ye be witnesses unto yourselves that ye are the children of them which killed the prophets. Fill ye up then the measure of your fathers. Serpents, generation of vipers, how can you escape the damnation of hell? Wherefore, behold, I send unto you prophets, and wise men, and scribes, and some of them ye shall kill and crucify, and some of them ye shall scourge in your synagogues, and persecute from city to city, that upon you may come all the righteous blood shed upon the earth, from the blood of the righteous Abel unto the blood of Zacharias, son of Barachias, whom ye slew between the temple and the altar. Verily I say unto you, all these things shall come upon this generation. Now here is the verse that James White is correct. It often does get said incorrectly. O Jerusalem, Jerusalem, thou that killest the prophets, and stonest them which are sent unto thee? How often would I have gathered thy children together, even as a hen gathereth her chickens under her wings, and ye would not. Behold, your house is left unto you desolate. For I say unto you, you shall not see me henceforth, till ye shall say, Blessed is he that cometh in the name of the Lord. Like I said, James White presents a lot of truth in what he says. The woes of the scribes and the Pharisees. Jerusalem was the seat of the kings, and the prophets were sent to the kings. The prophets were sent to preach and prophesy against the land, against the people, against the city of Jerusalem. And the specific one that was mentioned, Zechariah, son of Berechiah, well, that is in 2 Chronicles 24, I believe it is. As James White also mentions, you should go there and read it. Basically, he did a prophecy against them, and the people took counsel to kill him. The king commanded that he would be killed, and he was stoned in the, if I'm remembering right, in the court of the house of the Lord, or just outside of it. Now, here's the important thing, the error that James White had. O Jerusalem, 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 that killest the prophets and stones them which are sent unto thee, how often would I have gathered thy children together? Now let's go back to verse 31. Wherefore you be witnesses unto yourself that ye are the children of them that killed the prophets. He missed that. I don't believe with his study in Greek, especially with his preface in the video that I'm going to link to down there in the description, that he passed over this ignorantly. He wanted to make the point that the Pharisees and scribes, the hypocrites that he was talking to, the ones that the woe was given to, were nothing but a continuation. But guess what? Jesus is saying, how often would I have gathered thy children? How often would I have done this? Jesus obviously he wasn't speaking just of himself. In fact, he is basically telling the children of, O Jerusalem, Jerusalem, which is the scribes, the Pharisees. He tells them, fill up then the measure of your father. See, there had to have been some sort of conversation that's not recorded. Because, and say, this is what he's talking to them, woe unto you, scribes and Pharisees, hypocrites, because you build the tombs of the prophets, and you garnish the sepulchres of the righteous, and you say, the you is understood there, it's a continuation, and so it's dealing with the same people linguistically. And you say, if we had been there in the days of our fathers, we wouldn't have been partakers with them in the blood of the prophets. Oh, we wouldn't have done what they did, except they're Pharisees, and they're continuing in the traditions of the people that did this. But Jesus is saying, you're admitting that you're the children of these people. And Jesus says, Jerusalem, Jerusalem, Jerusalem that kills the prophets and stones them which are sent to thee. All right, this is all in the past. Malachi was the last prophet 400 years before Jesus. 400 years between Malachi and John the Baptist. So, those that stoned the prophets are long gone. Everyone in Israel at this point is the children of those. But God was saying, Jesus was saying here, how often, how many times that I want to gather your children together? And this, your children, is speaking of everyone in Israel. And yes, this is a bookend, like James White says. He's once again correct there. And now, here is the problem. He wants to make it seem like Jesus isn't talking to the Pharisees in 37 when he's calling them the children. And you know what? Whether he's right or whether he's wrong, that's not a point to make. That point right there is not the point of contention. But it has to be for him. See, Calvinism is not represented here. Calvinism is dismantled partly in this. The checks and balances of Scripture always will counter the heresies that arise. So, when this says, "and ye would not," it doesn't matter if he's saying, "Scribes and Pharisees, I wanted to bring the children of Israel to me, but you prevented them." Or if Jesus was saying, "Scribes and Pharisees, I wanted to bring you to me, but you would not." See, Calvinism says that the will of God cannot be resisted. And no matter how you want to look at this, if he was talking to the scribes and Pharisees, which he said, "You admit, you are the children of the ones that kills the prophet," and he repeats right here, "Jerusalem, Jerusalem, that kills the prophets. How often would I have gathered thy children?" Verse 31, "Wherefore you are witnesses against yourself, that ye are the children of them which killed the prophets." Jesus defined it there, James White. Calvinist, non-Calvinist, anyone that sees this and hears this, Jesus defined it. "Jerusalem, Jerusalem, that kills the prophets, I would have gathered your children. You are witnesses against yourself, that you're the children of them that killed the prophets." So, these ones that are having the woe claimed against them, proclaimed against them, scribes and Pharisees, well, they're the ones that Jesus was talking about. How often would God have wanted to take the scribes and Pharisees unto him? But they would not. And again, if you take the Calvinist James White's view, he's not talking about them. They are the ruling class. He's talking about other people. Well, but woe unto you, scribes and Pharisees, hypocrites. Verse 13, "For you shut up the kingdom of heaven against men. You neither go in, nor suffer them that are entering to go in." Well, that's funny, because Jesus said that he would want to gather those children to himself, but they would not. And as James White says in the bookends, he says that this is an echo of 13. I wholeheartedly agree. God's will is declared in 37, but human beings would not. And what was their would not? It prevented people that were going to be gathered from being gathered. And it says that these people wouldn't go in. They had Jesus says in another place that they shut up the keys of the kingdom, the keys of understanding. And here he says they shut up the kingdom of heaven against men. They don't even go in themselves. They could have. They had the keys, but they didn't. God declares his will. Of course, the Calvinist will have a non-scriptural catch-all that will say, well, that's only God's declarative will or his prescriptive will. It's not a secret will. not His undeclared will. It's a mystery. We have our doctrine, and we have Scripture. Well, we know Scripture's right because it's Scripture. And we know our doctrine is right because we wouldn't hold false doctrine. And yet there's a tension. The word tension, it's a lie. It means pulling in the opposite direction. They are opposite, contradictory things. We know this is true. We know this opposite, contradictory thing is true. It just must be a mystery how God reconciles it all. We just lift up the rug of mystery, sweep the contradiction underneath of it, and we will proclaim, as good little heretics, that our doctrine that contradicts the Bible, still true. And the doctrine of the Bible, still true. Two things talking about the same thing at the same time, in the same context, are polar opposites, but they're still true. That's just another reason why Calvinism is heresy. Calvinism's not the gospel. It twists Scripture. And as I've shown before in other videos, James White sets himself up as an expert in both Scripture and Calvinism. So let's take his words for what Calvinism is. You listen to his video. All it is an audio video, and it's a video because it's on YouTube, but it's just audio track. Go ahead and listen to it. He will gloss over and not touch on it other than just reading through about them being the children of those that kill the prophets. He will not relate it to verse 37. He won't do it. He can't do it. His doctrine can't allow him to do it because he doesn't have anywhere to go. And repeating for the last time doesn't really matter. Doesn't really matter if Jesus is calling them the ones that killed the prophets, or as the children, or as the one that killed the prophet. It doesn't matter which one that he chooses, because Jesus still said, how often would I have gathered the children, and you wouldn't permit it? I had my will, God's will. I would do this thing. You would not let me do my thing. Verse 13, verse 37, verse 31. The heretics got it wrong. Doesn't support Calvinism. I'm not an Arminianist. I don't support Arminian doctrine. I will have an overlap of where an Arminian doctrine is true will overlap with my doctrine, which is true, just like I will have an overlap with Calvinist doctrine where it's not contaminated. I will have an overlap with Roman Catholic doctrine where it's not contaminated, Lutheran doctrine where it's not contaminated, Baptist and Anabaptist and Methodist and Presbyterian where their doctrines are not contaminated. They will overlap, because a good poison has to be very little poison, a little leaven. So there's going to be lots of overlap. And the Calvinists will, Matt Slick's really good at this, well, you sound like a Roman Catholic to me. It doesn't mean anything. That right there is an ad hominem. Your argument is canceled because you agree some part, not tangential, not even touching what we're talking about, but you happen to have an agreement with the Roman Catholic Church. Therefore, nothing you say has value. James White plays the same fallacy. He doesn't normally come across as strong as Matt Slick does, but he does it. So anyway, listen to James White's video. I'm not lying. And then read it for yourself. I suggest a good chain reference Bible for a hard copy Bible. If you can get a chain reference online, that's great too. But anyway, James White claims that this is an Arminian scripture, the 1 verse 37, and that it doesn't support the free will of men acting against the will of God. And I think I've aptly shown that's exactly what it does do. All right, God bless. Thank you.